Welcome back to Mile High Hoops. Today we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks. I got a couple things to get out of the way here. So my AI generating app for the images that I've been using has been just super frustrating to use lately and hasn't been working right. Hopefully it gets fixed soon because I really enjoy those, and it led me to making a thumbnail that I wasn't super proud of. But the other thing is that I got a new mic. I got an Elgato Wave 3, and I got it set up with some filters and stuff, so hopefully it sounds much better than before. But with all that being said, like, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So let's start with Jalen Brunson. Jalen just left the Mavericks and went to the New York Knicks. For the Mavericks in the playoffs, I mean, he scored a bunch for them. He averaged almost 22 points. And as a secondary ball handler, I mean, he really held down the fort while Luka was on the bench. A lot of people were really freaking out about him leaving. I think it's not as big of a deal as everyone is making. The Mavericks didn't have one of their main players, Tim Hardaway Jr., for the vast majority of this season, as well as the entire playoffs. And with how ball dominant Luka is, I mean, you don't really need this other guy to be carrying that much of the load, especially when they've got Spencer Dinwiddie and some of these other guys that can handle the ball. I think Dinwiddie being there and Tim Hardaway Jr. being back will really mitigate the loss of Jalen Brunson. It's definitely not great because they didn't get anything in return. It wasn't like a sign and trade or anything, but I mean, he did run the pick and roll really well for them. He'd get into the paint and either just like shoot that little like hop step into fadeaway like 12-footer or less. And so they're definitely losing something there. I mean, defensively, he wasn't great. So, I mean, addition by subtraction there, I guess. But I think they'll be fine without him. It's not like he was super crazy young either as a younger guard, younger to the league. Now, the Mavericks were able to add Christian Wood this last offseason, and I definitely think losing Jalen Brunson and adding Christian Wood here is a positive. The guard play wasn't what lost the Mavericks the playoffs. It was more so, I mean, a lack of good bigs and a lack of wings, which we'll get to that in a little bit. But Christian Wood, he's on a $14 million deal for just this next season, and he's been mostly a almost 40% three-point shooter in the seasons that he has played a decent amount of games. But, I mean, he can score about, like, 15-ish points a game for them, gets about 9 or 10 rebounds. Assist numbers are pretty negligible. He turns it over a couple times a game, which isn't great, especially for a lower volume player. And he plays okay enough defense. And I think with the way that Jason Kidd got everyone to buy in defensively, I mean, we might see a different side of Christian Wood that's a little bit better defensively. I definitely think he'll fit in really good with this team. I mean, as a pick and roll partner with Luka, I mean, you can't really ask for a better guard to be around your center. So I think Luka will be able to get the best out of Christian Wood here. And the biggest question mark for me on him is mostly his free throw shooting. His free throw shooting's been really bad at like 62%. So, I mean, if he can get that up to like 70, that'd be definitely helpful. But I think he'll fit really well, and he'll be a big bonus for them. Now, as far as returning guys, we're going to get to Luka first, of course. Luka's the most important guy here. Luka just murdered everybody in the playoffs. I mean, he averaged 31.7 points, and he shot the three at 34.5%, but he takes really difficult ones and from really deep. So, I mean, if he was more picky with his shot selection, he'd probably be a higher percentage. But he gets about 10 rebounds a game, 6.5 assists. He does turn it over quite a bit, but he just has the ball in his hands so much that, I mean, that's bound to happen. But I've been saying this for the last, like, 2 seasons now. Luka's going to have an MVP. if it's not this season, it's going to be the next, and he should have multiple. I definitely think this next season he'll be poised to be in a good position to get it. Voter fatigue's going to kick in on Nikola Jokic. It already happened to Giannis. I don't think LeBron's going to get another one. I don't think Steph's going to get another one. James Harden is too far gone. Joel Embiid could be the other guy here, but I definitely think Luka's got a massive chance to get an MVP this next season. I did need to get into his weaknesses because I think mostly defensively is what is holding him back as far as getting MVP. If he was better at just like giving full effort on defense the entire time, keeping guys in front of him, helping to the side where the play is happening on, like the strong side, coming from that weak side and helping crash down on drives, getting a hand in the passing lane, whatever he can do, and just showing that full effort, which is a lot to ask out of the guy since he has the biggest hands on as far as how the offense goes. So, I mean, that's a lot to ask, but him stepping it up defensively to be an average, above average defender would really help him improve and catapult into that like lead most favored guy to get the MVP. Now we'll get into a couple more of these pretty important guys. Spencer Dinwiddie is the next guy that I want to talk about. I mean, he didn't play a lot this last offseason for them as far as like heavy guard minutes. He played about 28, which is still a good amount, but Jalen Brunson played 35, and I think Dinwiddie could definitely get a bigger role here. He's just such a solid guard. He shoots the ball really well. He presses the pace on offense really well too. Like he'll get a kick out and be sprinting the ball up the court, trying to see if he can get early offense. Defensively, I mean, he's just okay, but he is a taller guard too. I believe he's 6'4". So, I mean, he can guard ones and twos pretty decently. Definitely a better team defender than on ball. But I think Dinwiddie is just such a solid player and just another one of these guys that helps elevate the floor of this team. And he's just another guy that can kind of share some of the responsibilities when Luka goes to the bench. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith, I never really had much of an opinion about Dorian until this last season. In the playoffs, he was absolutely lighting it up from three. He shot 42.6% from three, but there was like, I believe it was against Utah, he hit like 9 in a game, which is pretty nuts, especially out of this like role player wing forward. I guess he would be a power forward at this point, but he can guard 1 through 4 pretty solidly. If team's playing small ball, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have him at the 5. But I mean, he's just the perfect role player at this point, especially around Luka, a guy that can guard, shoot, pretty much do it all. He's not like some wonderful ball handler or creator, but you don't really need him to be. So I think he's in a prime spot for this team. And now Reggie Bullock is the next guy that I want to talk about. He shot about 40% from 3 this last playoff run, and he actually did play the most minutes on the team. As far as I knew from like past seasons of Reggie Bullock, I just knew that he was a good shooter, and I didn't think he could guard really at all. And this last run, and then as well as the regular season, he was like one of the best wing defenders like in the league. Like he was clamping guys up, maybe not wings as much as smaller guards, but he was hard to get around, and people were struggling when he was on him. And then he can go on the other end and hit an open 3 when Luka drives and kicks. So, I mean, another great role player for this team, and certainly a guy they want to keep. And then Maxi Kleber, I think Maxi Kleber is just very solid at like everything he does. I mean, he shoots the 3 well. He can finish around the rim a little bit. He doesn't rebound a whole lot. And defensively, I mean, he's like okay. He guards the pick and roll decently because he can move his feet pretty well. He's not super vertically inclined, like he can't jump through the building or anything. But, I mean, he's just solid. I think that's why they went and got Christian Wood, because they wanted this better center. There was actually that report that Jason Kidd wants to start JaVale McGee over Christian Wood. I don't know why they would do that. I guess after like maybe a couple games through the season, I would bet that they would switch that and put Christian Wood back in the starting lineup. But we'll have to wait and see. Kleber could definitely play the 4 though, and has quite a bit. Especially if they run like a starting lineup of Luka, Tim Hardaway Jr. They could put Dorian Finney-Smith at the 3 then, since he can shoot and defend. Put Kleber at the 4, and then start Christian Wood. That's where I think they'd get the most success. Definitely so many different role players that they can switch that out game to game depending on what they need. But I think that Kleber definitely fits into this mold of these guys on this team, where most of them can play a lot of different positions and can guard a good amount of positions. And so I think he's a good fit, and I think that they might have just decided that maybe he's not like starter level. I think we'll have to see as far as where they want to go with their lineups, though. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the payroll on the Mavericks. So, I mean, Luka's locked in for the next 5 years. We're not even worried about that. Luka's going to be amazing. Dinwiddie is on a $20 million deal for the next 2 seasons. Next season is not fully guaranteed. I mean, not this upcoming one, the one after that. Tim Hardaway is on a declining contract starting about 19.6, ending at 16. And then the elephant in the room is Davis Bertans, and this is where I was getting at with this. So, I mean, he's getting paid 16 mil this next season, 17, and then 16 the year after that, and that last season isn't fully guaranteed. But I would imagine as soon as they get a call that even mentions a whiff of Davis Bertans' name, they're going to be signing the dotted line and trading him out as soon as they can, as like even just taking on some different contract that is either shorter, less guaranteed money, or like a longer term deal. I think that they would do it regardless of really the player, as long as they can get out of this money as soon as they can. Because they would start to open up some salary space in the 2024-2025 season, and even sooner depending on what they want to do with some of these other guys. But for what it's worth, I think that the guys they have long-term are guys that they want to keep and that they should keep, outside of Davis Bertans, of course. But then getting to wins for this team, I think this team is in another spot where they're going to be pushing to win a lot of games. Definitely just riding the shoulders of Luka Doncic the whole time. And it's really up to how well Luka can pace himself throughout the season, and if he can stay healthy. If he can do all those things, I mean, this team's going to play good defense. Offensively, they're going to run like a fine-tuned machine, with Luka just absolutely slicing defenses up with pick and roll, step backs, everything he can do to get to the rim and the floaters, all that. And so I think, again, they're going to be on the high side of the 5th seed. So anything above that, I am more than open to them at that spot. And I think that's going to be around 50-ish wins. And holy cow, I think I've said 50 wins for every pretty good team. Well, Western Conference so far, almost all of these have been really good teams. And it's just a matter of the tanking teams. It's the good teams and the tanking teams right now in the West. And outside of those teams, it's the Kings. So we'll get to the Kings probably next. But again, I think they'll go to the playoffs. They'll look good again. They'll slap one of these teams that thinks that they're a contender, like the Suns or something, like they did last season. But they're going to have a good shot to get to the Western Conference Finals. I don't think that they would win it all, though. Luka just needs another real star next to him. And that guy hasn't showed his face as to wanting a trade out yet. And I think there's a lot of possible suitors for who would want to play with Luka at this point. We'll definitely have to wait and find out what they kind of do over the next few seasons. I think this next season is another like developmental, how good can we be type season. And if they're looking really good in the regular season, they can always improve through trades. So with all that being said, thanks again for listening. Like and subscribe, as I said before, and comment down below what you'd like to see in the next one. And if I can get the AI app working again, if there was some sort of theme that you'd want to see. And again, thank you, and take care.